Good afternoon, everyone. This is Heather Turner, the Marketing Director at ALP, and we are on with our co-CEOs, Chris Ulmer and Rob Fulton. And we're unfortunately going to be talking about a very important topic that you've been all hearing much too much about. What we are doing and what you can do in the face of this. Just a couple of quick housekeeping things before we start. We are recording this, so if for whatever reason you know someone that tried to get on that could not, or you want to revisit this webinar, or your association or other people have asked if we are taping this, we are, and we will make the recording available as soon as it is processed. If you have any questions, there is a question bar to the right of your screen where you can ask questions. I know that we have an awful lot of people on this call, and everyone may not be able to ask questions directly in GoToWebinar. If for whatever reason you do not have that capability, I also have another computer open with my email. Please email me at marketing@alplodging.org, and we will be checking it periodically. So this is kind of a backup in case you can't ask a question. So Chris and Rob, welcome. Do you have any quick words before we start through this?
This is Rob. Sorry, just a minute to get off mute. Thanks, Heather, for putting this together. And I just want everybody to know as we go through this that we're here to support our members in the industry any way that we can. So look forward to having the conversation. We've got a lot of great information to share, and look forward to your questions at the end.
Thank you.
Yes, and this is Chris. We don't have all the answers, really nobody does, but with whatever questions you might have, we will do whatever research we can do to find an answer or get some helpful suggestions for you. And as we've mentioned before, we are all in this together. So, and thank you for attending today.
Okay. One of the first things that I want to address is I just got this email several hours ago from the Federal Trade Commission, and the fact that they are concerned about this is huge. And I've also been hearing a lot of reports on the forums and also emails from people that the scams regarding money and credit and loans are already coming out in force. We just want to make sure that people are being aware that the increase in scams is definitely going to be on the rise. If you get an email or a phone call and you are at all unsure of the origin or whether this is fact or fiction, please email it to us and we will do what we can to research it. We may know the answer right off the bat. We may know that it is a scam. And if we haven't heard of it, though, we will do some research on it. So don't just hit, oh, sure, that sounds like a great deal, because like many things, if it sounds too good to be true, it generally, unfortunately, is. Now, we've been asking and getting a lot of questions from properties about should we be letting guests know about what properties are doing. And we are also trying to figure out what to tell them. And we've drafted up a sample letter that INS can customize, but we also wanted to make a couple of statements about what else you should be doing. Is definitely put a statement on your website, definitely put something in your reservations and confirmation emails, and also put things out on social media. There have been a lot of great examples out there already. If you do a little bit of searching, especially on Facebook, you can get some really good suggestions from what to do. I do want to make a point about email marketing. Everybody is getting deluged from every business under the sun, from their banks to their plumbers to their internet companies, that what each business is trying to do in the face of this. But what I'm also seeing from a huge amount of people is that they're getting really annoyed by this. So I think we kind of all need to take it for granted that people understand that we are doing the best we can in this industry. If you feel you need to send an email out to guests and past guests and potential guests, the best practices that we've seen so far are try to make it part of a normal email that you were going to be sending out anyway, instead of just sending it out specifically for that purpose. You know, I know that I literally, and I've been counting my emails, I have gotten over 350 just in the last couple of days from properties and from everybody under the sun with that. So please take that into consideration. Everybody gets so much email as it is. But I think with all of the other messaging opportunities out there, we can certainly reassure people that we are doing what we can. Now, this is the sample letter. We have a lot of documentations that we will be sending out to everybody who attends and also making this broadly available. This is based on a lot of different samples that people have either sent us or have posted online. These are definitely things that you don't have to take word for word, but please customize them to suit. But in terms of messaging, just to let people know, and again, put it on your website, put it on your social media to reassure people, and please customize it to suit. There's a note in here specifically about duvets. I know that people have asked in bed and breakfasts, are duvets washed? And in most of them that I know of, they are, but in a lot of hotels and motels, they're not. So that might be something specifically that you might want to put in this letter, for example. Chris, I believe this is a slide for you.
Yes, indeed it is. One of the most common questions that we are getting is, what do I do about my reservation and cancellation policies? Do I keep them in place? Do I modify them? And we do have information on our website, again, with samples of, what different hoteliers are doing. But we did put together some options for you to consider. And of course, the goal would be to have you retain as much of the funds as possible. And that could be done by exchanging the present reservation for gift certificates. And gift certificates can be certainly made out to the individual who is attempting to cancel their reservation, or you may want to consider, having the gift certificate be transferable to someone else. And that would be a similar situation to a credit for a future stay. We'll just retain your funds, and when you do want to come back and join us for a getaway, they will be waiting for you. And again, could those funds be transferable to the guest's choice of individual? Many folks have deadlines, something will expire within a certain amount of time. Could you look at broadening those? And all of the items that I've just mentioned do keep the option for dealing with the guest with you. And that really leads us to our fourth point, which is emphasize on your website, on your policies, anywhere you can, to book direct, so that the guest does deal with you. And we know that they would much rather work with you than with Expedia or big tech, because they're certainly going to get personal service with you. New reservations, we'll be talking a little bit about this later. Certainly reservations are not flowing into the inn at this point, but if you did want to put something about making reservations in your regular newsletters or social media, mention that, reserving ahead, the guest will enjoy flexible reservation cancellation policies, the option to get the best room available, and so on, like along those lines. Can you change to the next slide, Heather? Okay. Some individuals, would prefer to dig in their heels on a reservation and cancellation policy. And, we personally see some problems with that. We know that reviews can be brutal. And do you want to risk a very negative review in the face of this virus, which, really is nobody's fault? Innkeepers, lodging professionals are just as much a victim as guests and the traveling public are. So, we certainly ask you to think a little bit about, is the cost of a guest going online and posting negative reviews worth your keeping a deposit? And certainly with as widespread as this virus is, there's going to be more than one person in that situation. And, we certainly know that it's very difficult to mend your online reputation when it has been trashed. Now, some of you also asked about credit card fees, and the fact that, when a reservation is made, you're paying credit card fees, and when it's canceled, you also are likely to be paying credit card fees. So there's certainly a double whammy there. I did contact AH&LA, the American Hotel and Lodging Association, and asked them if they had any plans to, get this message out to credit card companies, and as yet they have not responded. But I did contact one of our allied partner vendors, Win Salich, who has Casablanca Ventures, about this item regarding credit card fees for cancellations. And here is what he replied. Whenever an innkeeper processes a refund, MPI, which is Mercantile Processing Inc., passes through in full the interchange return rate refund, which credits back nearly all of the processing cost of the original transaction. There's no new cost for the refund with us. Some other processors do the same, while some do charge for refunds or even keep the proceeds from the interchange return rate for themselves. And this would include Stripe, PayPal, Intuit, and Square. So bottom line is check with your credit card processor to see how do they handle refunds. Is it going to cost you more or not? So I believe, Heather, you can bring up the next slide. And that would be yours.
It's fun muting back and forth. Sometimes it takes a minute to find the unmute button. So we've been asked by a lot of innkeepers what we can do in terms of alternative planning. These are just a couple of things that have been suggested by innkeepers and also talked about. I know that a big one seems to be alternative check-in procedures is offering online check-in or kiosk check-in or also mobile check-in, which somebody suggested just a little while ago. We are working on some additional ideas. I wish we had a rabbit to pull out of a hat with this one, but we do know that with the increase of companies and the government encouraging people to work at home or at least to work in smaller spaces, people may need some co-working spaces, so it is something that is worth investigating. We've also had several questions about what happens if the hospitals get full. Apparently over in the UK and other parts of the world, many hotels and bed and breakfasts are being used as medical facilities. That's not something that I would wish on anybody, but it is something that might be an option at some point. When this is happening in other countries, the property owners are getting reimbursed for this. But it also unfortunately makes us a bit less safe, which is sad. And several innkeepers also suggested breakfast delivery. I know that a lot of restaurants are going that route because they can't have patrons come to them and guests come to them. So breakfast delivery, I'm not sure whether that is an option or not. That is something that we would actually have to go on a case-by-case basis, whether your county would allow it. But I suspect in these times that it might happen. But we are working on some additional ideas. And Chris, you
Heather,
had something to add.
yes, could I just jump in? When you had mentioned that in other locations, Europe, for example, the health agencies are looking to lodging properties to house or individuals who are under quarantine. AH&LA did AH&LA was approached by one of the states here in the US about this practice, and AH&LA wrote a very good letter as far as B&Bs, inns, hotels not being equipped to provide this level of care, and we'll be sure to post that in our resources on the website.
Thank you, Chris.
Yep, you're welcome.
And Chris, did you want to address this one?
Yes. Yes. So in the news you can use this week, I had gotten a newsletter from the Colorado Bed and Breakfast Association, and in my opinion, the innkeepers had some wonderful suggestions that you could post on your website or include in your social media that really showed how the innkeepers, provided a very caring message, and really we're very nurturing to guests who may choose to come to their property at this time or shortly thereafter. And so many of these practices really become amenities, and most of them are without any cost. You know, doing things that you usually do with a slight tweak, like, you know, if you have private tables available for dinner and breakfast, using those also for your wine tastings at private tables instead of a group type of social. Using, you know, disposable snack plates, even wine glasses, so that guests are reassured, you know, about a low opportunity for transmission of any virus or you know, liquids like that. How you infect your surfaces, that's just, you know, pretty much routine, but that you're stepping it up. Um, as Heather mentioned before, delivering breakfast to the room, you know, which might mean changing a little bit of the room amenities or putting additional, you know, seating in there. I thought dine-in delivery options was certainly something that was attractive. Keeping as much food type of items, you know, in the guest room and allowing the guests basically to be, you know, on their own, which is what so many of guests want anyway. And then also along the lines of the fact that we're small businesses, employees certainly can be retained for many years, have a real sense of ownership of the property and a real sense of commitment to caring and being more diligent in their work, and that would translate into, you know, the practices that the small property is able to offer. So again, just, you know, hopefully some ideas to perhaps inspire you to just slightly tweak, you know, how you do business.
This is Rob. So the next two slides are mine, and I just want to say here, and let me just chat about this, and then I'll have Heather flip to the next one. But we are working on some resources and some tools for you to use as you think about, you know, from a disaster recovery perspective. And I think Heather said this at the beginning. We've been talking to quite a few members about this, that, you know, there are some suggestions here that hopefully will help us rally here, you know, as we go forward. But as we think about the future, I think it's really helped ALP as an association really be thinking about how we can best serve you as members by helping you be prepared for these things that happen, whether it's natural disasters, what we're facing now with the coronavirus, or other things that may happen. So just encourage you to think about this as you think about the future as well, not just, you know, of course, immediate needs. And I think we'll all be, you know, much better prepared. So we're working on customizing these. Some of these that we found some good tools are not always specific to the lodging industry. So we're going to do a little bit of tweaking here. Heather, just flip to the second slide. So we will get these out to you ASAP. We just need, like I said, just a little bit of time to update these. But these will be some resources we'll not only post on the resource page on the website, but of course send to you directly. So just look for that coming shortly. I think back to you, Heather.
Yep. So one of the things in terms of crisis communications is we've gotten a lot of questions from innkeepers is about what happens if we come down with the virus. What happens if we have a guest come down with the virus while they are at the inn and we have to quarantine ourselves, and we have to quarantine ourselves and our guests. We are working on some suggestions and some strategies for this, but we do know regardless of what happens, whether you are trying to keep your business open and running and accept current reservations, or something does happen that is an actual crisis, please try to keep your social media updated and your website updated if you can, and your current reservations and past guests. And the note in red about developing this in advance is we all hope that nothing bad happens to all of us, but we should be prepared for this. So it's better to be prepared and not have to use it at all than if you are not feeling well and something unfortunately happens, you're not going to be feeling well enough to deal with this. So if you have some time, which unfortunately many of you do, it's best practices to try to take a few minutes and run up an outline of what you can put online and put out there for messaging in advance. And I know it's painful to think about that, but again, it's better to do that while you have some time and just getting ahead of the game a bit. So these are some suggestions that we've come up with, as well as other innkeepers and other resources have come up with. One of the good ones that I saw on a forum the other day was talking about doing virtual field trips. Everyone has cell phones that they can put out there. So doing some video walkthroughs of your inn in the area while you have a chance, and the inn is open and unfortunately empty for many of you, but also taking a lot of pictures. Taking and developing tests of new recipes is also, if you do have things in stock, and especially if you can freeze them, get a little bit ahead of the game while you have it. You know, I know that for my own personal perspective, once I have a little bit of time, which may not happen anytime soon, I'm going to take some online classes myself to get up to speed on some things that I would like to know more about. This is a good opportunity to get ahead on things. As ALP members, we do have a lot of webinars and past articles that I know many of you have not had a bit of a chance to go through, because I know you've all been working 24/7. Learn some new skills, bump up your social media presence. And I'm going to touch on this, and we all will touch on this several times, is the fact that, you know, we are not realistically going to have reservations now, or unfortunately anytime soon, but the lodging industry will recover, and we have a lot of faith that it will. One of the biggest complaints that I get with innkeepers is we just don't have time to work on this. We don't have time to get ahead of this. So take this time and use it wisely. And, you know, in my own personal perspective, I think it's better to stay busy and stay proactive, because if you just sit and get depressed about not having business coming in now, you're going to get into a slump. And then I know it's hard to get out of that, you know, so get ahead of this. You know, decreasing ad spends, taking a really hard look at what you're paying for pretty much anything online. If you're paying for Google AdWords, for example, you know, be cognizant of the fact that if people are not making reservations right now, being on the very top of Google probably isn't helping you out much. You know, have a plan in place to readdress that, so that when the economy does recover in a few months and people are making reservations, that you have that funds to be able to use those for Google Ads when you can actually get some results from it. And I am hearing this, thankfully, from a lot of innkeepers, but chambers, businesses, and trade associations really are going to be your best resources, because I know that from my own personal perspective, I belong to several chambers, and the amount of contact that they're putting out with members and the community, and the other trade associations that I belong to the fact that everybody's getting together and trying to help with this is just phenomenal. I guess you might say we're a little biased here, because we are a trade association, but we are trying to do everything that we can to help you guys. But please keep that in mind in terms of expenditures. Just take a really hard look at where your expenditures are. If you don't need it, especially for marketing perspective right now, it's not necessarily something that you should discontinue totally, but you might want to just put it on hold for a month or two. Chris or Rob, do you have anything you want to add to that?
This is Chris. So often the mantra is, when your business is down, you know, increase your marketing. But this is certainly a very unusual situation, and it's true. You know, people are not looking to make reservations now, so be ready for when they are.
Thank you.
Yeah, so let me jump in here, and Heather in particular on this slide will. I did see a question in the chat, which I know we'll get to some questions here, but about making suggestions related to helping find short-term funding, loans, et cetera. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and we will answer your question here. There is a lot of great work going on. Heather has a particularly strong relationship with SBA through what she does through her through SCORE, and as I know Heather will talk a little bit about this. So we benefit from having Heather's relationship here as we work through this. There's a really great one-pager. I'm going to talk a little bit about H&LA next. They just put out a really great one-pager from SBA. We're going to share that as part of the follow-up, and it will be posted, of course, on the website. But it's a nice one page on looking at, to the question that one of our members asked about these short-term loans. And we're following this very closely, as I'm sure you all are as well. Was a little bit of a moving target as the government, you know, federal government looks at how they're going to fund these programs. But we will keep you particularly apprised of this. This is something you definitely want to check into. We did just put a little bit of the information on this slide, so you see that. But we will share that one page, as I said, as well. And in particular, again, and Heather, if there's something you may want to add, but Heather will have some good advice on this given her relationship. So we want to be sure that members are paying attention to this in particular when you look at funding to help support your business. Heather, anything you would add to this SBA in general?
Not at the moment, but we are getting a lot of information directly from the SBA, and I'll make sure that that's shared as we get more.
Yeah, so we'll get this information out to you, but I would encourage you to look at some of the website and specifically the disaster pages. So stay tuned on that. AHLA is doing a really great job on looking for relief and support for our industry. And I've been getting quite a few emails. I know Chris and I have both been getting quite a few emails, and Chris has been in contact with them, as she mentioned earlier, on a couple of other questions. This is a great resource for us. This is something that ALP can really take advantage of on the national level to make sure that our voice is being heard. When I look at all of the emails, just for those of you that aren't maybe as familiar with AHLA, the American Hotel and Lodging Association, I have a long-standing relationship with them as well through the different tourism entities I've worked with. But when they're communicating with lawmakers, I just wanted to make this point. They are talking about bed and breakfasts and inns and boutique hotels and state and local associations. It's not just the large hotel chains. Of course, we're all in the lodging industry, but there are some differences between the segments. And just want you to know that our part of the industry is being called out specifically to make sure that our part of the small business is getting the help that it needs. This is something that AHLA shared over the last couple of days. Again, this is just a snapshot. We'll be sharing some other handouts that they have. Some of you may be getting the AHLA newsletter already. For any former AIHP members that may not be on that list, just know we're working to get you added into the AHLA communication, so that will be coming soon. But this Hospitality Workforce Relief Fund, providing flexibility and lending, in particular to some of the questions we've gotten, and access to loans for hotel owners, hotel being, all of those property types that I just mentioned. So we're supporting these. We're in constant contact with them. In fact, AHLA has a scheduled call every Monday now to pull in their state or local association partners or national association partners, and just know that Chris and I are a part of those meetings and making sure that we're getting the support that we need for all of you, and we'll keep you apprised of this. AHLA is looking for your support. We'll share this with you. There's a call out that would be really important for your local Congress, your federal Congress men and women, and your local legislators as well, to hear your story. I think it's going to be important to share what is happening to our industry. So again, there's some information here, and we'll share more of that as we go. Chris, anything you want to add to the AHLA piece?
No, you covered it very thoroughly, so thank you.
Yeah. No, they're a great resource, so stay tuned. So I guess I'll start this, but Heather and Chris, it's kind of for all of us. These are some things that, we've talked about some of these, but some things that ALP is doing specifically to help you. I will say too that a little bit to what I was just talking about is there's some really great support at the national level. There's a lot of national associations, of course, whose members are being impacted, and particularly in our segment of the industry. But we're going to talk a little bit about who some of those relationships are on another side. But just know that between Heather and Chris and I know Eric's doing some of this as well. We're probably on 2 or 3 webinars a day trying to glean, best practices and what other associations are doing for their members and how it can be of help. So that's a part of this. I'm not going to read through all these, but Chris and Heather did a great job on the News You Can Use newsletter today. A lot of information went out through that, to the ALP blogs. I think Heather's going to show you a little bit about what's on the ALP on the resource page. She has a slide for that. So we just want you to know we're working hard at being as diligent as we can to get you the answers that you need, or at least point you in the right direction. And then you'll see that last bullet point there at the bottom, which we just talked about regarding SBA loans or needing some other specific information. Please use Heather as kind of your primary contact there, given her relationship. Chris and I work with her on those things as well. I don't know if anybody else has anything they wanted to add to this particular slide.
Well, we do want to know, we are going to be scheduling webinars from innkeepers and vendors and anybody else that we can get on that would be of help. But we'd like to know what topics specifically would be the most helpful to you. We can certainly try to make some guesses, but hearing it directly from you guys would really, really help us coordinate and organize what would best help you. So please let us know, please email us or call us, but the more information that you can give us in terms of what you need, the better off we can help you do things, basically. Okay, so we had sent this out in the email newsletter, and I know that doing social media now and planning for social media kits and press release writing and connecting with journalists is probably the very last thing on your agenda now, especially facing a lot of cancellations. But this is the time to get ahead of this. These are actually 2-hour workshops that I have been running for SCORE for small businesses, and they are actually hands-on workshops. So it's not a lecture, it's not a webinar. We will be meeting via online Zoom, and I'll be sending out documents in advance so that we will actually have breaks and discussion periods about all of this. We'll be also doing one-on-one help sessions. So every Thursday, and we will continue this well past this if we need to. We will be offering half-an-hour sessions, and a sign-up form will be available soon for members. So if you need help with a particular thing, you would like to know more about what insights mean for Facebook or how to set up a YouTube channel, do this while you have the time, and please let us know because we do want to help. Chris or Rob, do you want to address some of this?
Well, Chris, do you?
Certainly, I'll just mention the first item on red. This hit the news basically yesterday that the IRS has not changed their filing deadline, which is April 15th, but they have changed when any payment is due, and they've extended the deadline by 90 days. So payments would be due July 15th of 2020. And, this is in the news, but we certainly recommend that you work with your own tax professional to get the details on this. There are limits, which are quite generous, $10 million and under would be the eligibility standard for businesses to make a later payment. 1 million is the standard for individuals to make payments. So again, they are quite generous, but do work with your tax professional on this.
Okay, and we are getting some reports that some people are having some audio issues, but the vast majority of people seem to be able to hear us fine. We are recording this, and I will make a note of this again. Everybody will be getting a copy of this that's registered, and we will be distributing it online for everybody. If you can't hear this, I will put this in the chat bar as well.
Yeah, so we mentioned some of this. I just wanted to call out a few groups that we're working with in particular, and some of this is, we've talked about, we mentioned AHLA, and again, they're doing a great job, and we're talking to them on a weekly, if sometimes not daily basis. So we will keep you apprised, and there will be opportunities for you to certainly to weigh in. ASAE, which is Chris and I and Heather's, the team's professional association, American Society of Association Execs, ALP is members, and they provide a lot of great information. Some of it's really more specific to us as association staff, but it helps us navigate how we can better communicate with our members, how certainly how events are being impacted, and so forth. So we're talking to them about how we can better serve you as a membership association, and they're doing a great job as well. Smith Travel Research, also known as STR, I think many of you are available or aware of this. We do have a partnership that we're working on. Anybody on the call that was in Albuquerque for the summit just a few weeks ago, end of February, we may have heard a presentation from Smith Travel Research. We do have a partnership that we're working on, so we can track how our segment of the industry is doing from a research and a data perspective, of course, with what's going on around the world right now. There's obviously huge impacts. I was just on a webinar earlier this week where, while it was very sobering news, and certainly not the news we wanted to hear, that it does, a company like Smith Travel Research does help us keep apprised of what we're seeing, and we'll share that, those that type of data and things that are relative to our segment of the industry with you as well. But just know that we're working with them. They have weekly seminars going on now, or webinars going on for the foreseeable future as we track certainly the dramatic impact to to hospitality industry. And then of course we've been talking about SBA and Small Business Association and SCORE and the relationship that Heather has. So we'll continue to keep you apprised. I did also want to mention, I forgot to mention this to you, Heather and Chris, earlier when we talked, but we are working also with B&B Finder. They are doing some surveying of not only properties, but also guests, so that we can try to track, what we're hearing from the properties in our industry, but also, types of data and information that we're getting from guests, and that may help us shape the types of things that we can do to support you all. So I just wanted to give them a shout out for doing those surveys, and they'll start sharing that data with us, and we'll use that in our decision making as we go forward. The other thing I wanted to say, this is probably a good place to say it. Let me just say real quick, Heather, sorry. We did get an email this morning, reach out from Maria Cotter from the Bed and Brunch PR. Maria and Jay, if those of you that know them, they've offered to, we're going to share this information with you after the webinar. Maria was not able to get on because the webinar was full this afternoon, but they are looking to do, we've been talking a lot about, certainly from a PR perspective, how we can be promoting our industry and the, the unique experience and all the great things that you all do. So we'll send this information to you, but they've offered to do a free PR campaign for the industry and bed and breakfast, boutique hotels, independent properties, and so forth. So we're going to work with them to get this out to you, and then you'll see the information in your email. And if you choose to participate, which I hope that you will, this will help us create through Maria and Jay to create more of a national PR campaign. We hope to, obviously to educate, guests and potential guests about our industry, but also certainly to encourage them to think about you all's options, not only in this time, but going forward. So you'll see more information on that, but I just wanted to remind everybody that we'll be sending that out as well. So, Heather.
Thank you, Rob. And we are putting together as many resources as we can. These are public. We have a public blog. I have another batch of things to go out as soon as this webinar is over. This is all open to the public information. We've also done health and resources information for COVID by state. And we're also going to be releasing and putting out what some of the banks are putting out in terms of policies and pretty much anything else that we can find that might be of use to everybody. We also have a disaster resource section in the members only section of the ALP website. This is all information that is publicly available, so it's not anything that you can't all go to Google and look for, but what we've tried to do is put it in one place for members. So we're not trying to be exclusive in this regard. This particular page has a lot of other types of disaster resources, not just COVID-19 planning. So I just want to reassure people that we're not trying to not give you the information. This is all publicly available. We've just collated it for our members. This webinar originally was just supposed to be members only, but we had so many people ask if we could attend that it got opened up to a lot more. I do want to mention we have a News You Can Use newsletter, that there is a members only version, and there is a version that goes out to anybody that signs up. And anything of importance, especially in this case, like this particular case, we do send that information out to everybody. So if you are not on the mailing list, if you go to the homepage of the ALP website, there is an email sign up, and on our social media Facebook pages, there is also a tab which says join my list on the Better Ways to Stay page and our other Facebook pages that you can also sign up from there. And this is the PR campaign that Rob was referring to. And
yeah,
we'll be sending this out as well. So I know it's a lot of wording to look at.
Yeah, thanks for including that. I got ahead of myself.
Okay, so we do have a lot of questions. We don't have a limit on time, so we will try to address as many of these questions as we can right now. We unfortunately may not have the answers to all of them. If we don't have the answers, we will try our best to try to find them for you. So our first question is it wise to limit your occupancy during this situation? If you have 5 rooms, should we limit occupancy to 2 or 3 rooms maximum? And Chris or Rob, do you want to weigh in on this one?
This is Chris. Well, at present, and of course things change by the minute, the government is recommending gatherings of no more than 10 individuals. So, you know, can that apply to your lodging properties? I certainly don't see why not. Obviously, the fewer people that are together, the lower the risk we would assume to be. But again, the government standard right now is 10 or fewer.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer because I'd be curious, and then maybe this is something, a future topic, Heather, to be addressed, is having some of our marketing partners, you know, on a call. I mean, I'm sure they're already doing a great job notifying their clients, but seems like a really good topic to discuss or questions for you know, for our marketing partners about how to, you know, manage, you know, occupancy during a time like this, aside from, of course, what Chris just said, and that maybe that there's limits to how many people can be in the property at once, but be worth exploring that a little bit more, I think.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
The next question we got, and I do not know the answer to this one, other than I know they are being produced in this country. Do you know of any sources for the hand sanitizers and the hand sanitizer liquid? I do know several recipes directly from the CDC and the health departments have recommended to make your own that I can share, but I don't know any direct sources other than that currently. Rob or Chris, have you heard any?
I would say what I've heard is probably what everybody else knows, that if you try to order it online, the prices are egregiously inflated. So Heather, actually, I would be very interested in having the recipe that you mentioned posted somewhere.
It is actually posted on one of the blogs that we've posted already, but I will make sure that I highlight it. I do actually want to note this, that if you're looking for things on Amazon, certain products, you know, although Amazon is saying that they're moderating vendors jacking prices up, I've weirdly enough was looking at video cameras for webcams because several people had a question about getting them, and 2 webcams that I bought last year are now up to 6 times the price. But when I went to Staples, they were the actual prices. So if you're looking for something online, you might actually want to look at your local office supply store, which might actually still have something on stock at a normal price. Let's see, and there's some questions about cancellations. What if we can't afford to give refunds at this time? This is a very serious issue. With no revenue coming in, there is no money for refunds. And, you know, reputation is important, but so is staying in business, which, and we understand. Chris and Rob, any thoughts on that?
Other than not being able to know what to say, it's certainly a very difficult situation. You'd certainly want to deal with the guest as well as you could. Perhaps share a little bit about your situation, the fact that, you know, you would have options as far as the gift card or gift certificates, or, you know, rescheduling, that type of thing. Or, you know, if they're insistent on a refund, you know, that one would be forthcoming, and try to estimate a certain time when a refund would be available. But that is an incredibly difficult issue to deal with. And, you know, certainly my heart goes out to people that are in that situation.
Yeah, I wonder if, again, I just a little bit out of my, I'm not sure. I just wonder, to your point, Chris, if there can't be, if properties can't, like you were saying, define a period for the refund, right? And so if that gets added to the cancellation policy or gets communicated to the guests that, that a refund, if the property chooses to honor the refund or give a refund, that, that will be done within 60 days. I'm not an attorney. I don't know if that's, I guess I'm just throwing that out there as a potential. It certainly seems like you could define when that refund happened within reason. And then just harking back to, I think some of the properties I've talked to, just Chris and Heather have as well, offering the gift cards or gift certificates, and other forms of, or credits and things to try to avoid that. I know I've heard some horror stories about some guests that have really been pretty intense about this. That's a tough one, yeah. But I would think about defining a time period for a refund if that's something that's doable. I mean, it seems to be in this type of situation a fair compromise that it's coming, but maybe not immediately.
There is 2 comments from 2 different innkeepers. One is saying we're writing checks instead of processing a credit card and no one is objecting. And another one wrote, we just gave a refund and sent a check. We just sent a check instead of the refund. Okay, I guess that's kind of just with the same thing reworded a little bit differently. There is a comment that our suggested letter is probably not as appropriate now, be more appropriate for last week with the shelter in place and restaurants closed. At this point, we don't want anyone from the outside with us in the next 2 weeks. And if I could just address that one for a second, we have people from all over the place on this. And in a lot of states where they have not yet had massive closures and shutdowns, and I'm sure they are coming, people are still open for business. And I know we have several people on from Mexico and also from Canada as well. And everybody's handling this a little bit differently. I do think, to take a letter like that, while it may not necessarily be appropriate to your particular property right now, you can also put it out there to guests for the future to say, this is what we are dealing with now, so that when we reopen, we will make sure that your inn is safe and sanitary for your return. Because I would be willing to guess pretty spot on, I would say at this point, that when we are reopened for business, there's going to be a lot of concern about the cleanliness of places. So reassuring people that we are taking care of things now for the future, I think, is probably not a bad idea. Chris or Rob, do you have any comments about that one?
Not necessarily, but I certainly appreciated your point that the individuals attending this webinar are from all over. So, we're bound to be seeing different levels of the viral infection at this point.
Yep, I agree.
The next question is, we're in a state that is closing all restaurants, bars, and no gatherings of 10 or more people. Can we stay open? Should we stay open? Chris or Rob, if you want to comment on that one. I think my own one is, I know a lot of innkeepers are they're basically closing down and not accepting reservations, but I don't think we can speak for what you should do. You probably have to make that decision on your own.
Well, exactly. And I think that harkens back to the innkeeper who asked the question about limiting the number of rooms. If the government is, the health agency are saying 10 or fewer are permitted at a gathering, that could be a guideline for you. But I guess bottom line, it's your business and your choice.
Okay. The next question, are most innkeepers, oh, Rob, did you have a comment about that?
Yeah, no, sorry, I was just going to agree with Chris. Yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah.
The next question is, are most innkeepers accepting guests for the next 2 weeks? I know that I've literally spoken with and corresponded by phone and email with, I've lost count, probably over 500 innkeepers just in the last week, and quite a few since Monday. And it's really mixed. It's depending on the state, and it's depending on where your own level of state lockdown is. I know here in New Hampshire, for example, they just shut down pretty much everything the other day. They said, no restaurants. We suggest everybody stays home. I know that Vermont hopefully is soon following that, but I think that's a question that's state by state at this point. Okay. There is a question, is there a way we can get this so we can print it? And yes, I will PDF this PowerPoint so that it can be printed off. The next question is, are there standard clause in any insurance contract that covers this type of event? Chris or Rob?
We had asked a couple of our insurance companies who are ALP members about the loss of income type of insurance, and would that cover situations like this, the loss of business because of the virus. And basically their answer was there's nothing specific to this. But if your own loss of income policy covers, disease or that type of thing, then it likely would be covered. But then again, too, we had also discovered from the individuals that we talked with, if there's a hurricane coming down the block, for example, and you suddenly decide to take out hurricane insurance, it probably is not going to cover you because of the, no known, incident clause. So, if you have loss of income insurance now, you'd certainly want to talk to your insurer, about how you may or may not be covered, but taking it out now is very probably not going to cover you because it is a known incident. But again, I'm not a professional insurance agent, so definitely talk about this specific type of coverage with your own.
Yeah, this is Rob, and we can certainly, as Chris said, we've been talking to some of our insurance members, and we, I think some of the questions raised, as we said, we don't have all the answers to, but these are things we will explore for you for sure. And I just want to say something about travel insurance, and this isn't going to be a solution here. I just want to take the opportunity to make a plug for this, because we do have a relationship with Travel Guard through ALP, and we did reach out to them. Of course, coronavirus is not an identified entity in those policies so that somebody could cancel for that. But it does cover somebody that has to cancel their trip because they've got sick, or other extenuating circumstances. And it's not a solution for everything. It doesn't necessarily address, what's going on with the coronavirus, but it is a solution, particularly for things around natural disasters and, and other things, encouraging your guests, if you're offering travel insurance, whether it's Travel Guard or some other option, if you're offering that to a guest, it does allow you to put some teeth into the cancellation. And again, I know it doesn't necessarily address the current situation per se, but I would encourage you to think about that going forward. We have some of our members that are using it. I don't think there's a large portion that are. It would be an interesting question, Heather and Chris, to ask in some future survey. I'm wondering how many properties, do offer travel insurance in general, but those that have used it through the hurricane season and through the fires and some of the horrible things that we're seeing around the country, it's allowed the property to enforce their cancellation policy and be made whole, and it allows the guests to, be made whole if they're canceling for, a legitimate reason. So while not a solution to coronavirus, we'll share more of that information, but it is a solution that does help you in some circumstances, even if it only helps you 25% of the time. It's better than than nothing. So I just wanted to add that in, talking about insurance.
Okay, and we do have several innkeepers asking us about Airbnb and about the refunds. They said they have had a lot of business through Airbnb, but the mass just giving people back the cancellations have been really hurtful.
Yeah, Chris did share that article. Thank you, Heather, in the News You Can Use today. That is something we're reaching out to directly to Airbnb now that we saw those policy changes that they just made. So we'll follow up on that with everybody, with the membership on that particular question. But we're reaching out to have a discussion and to make sure that there's an understanding of the impact that's having on on our members in the industry.
Thank you, Rob. And there are a lot of questions about short-term funding loans and SBA disaster loans areas. I will be getting more information together, and we will be sending that out very, very shortly. And as I personally get more information as a Scrum mentor, we get a lot of SBA information pretty quickly, sometimes right before it's released to the public. So as soon as I get it, I will make sure that that is passed out publicly to everybody. I don't have a perfect answer for that, but if you are looking for funding loans through the SBI, I can certainly help point you in the direction of where to go and the documentation for what you need to fill out. Let's see, some other questions. We have quite a few duplicates in here that we've already addressed. Let's see. Oh, this is a good one. Do you have cleaning guidelines for a virulent virus as we are dealing with? Obviously, vinegar and natural products are not enough. Cleaning protocol list would be helpful. And yes, I certainly actually have several lists that are put out by WHO and the CDC and several other sources with cleaning protocols that I can share. So thank you for bringing that up. I will make sure that that gets out to everybody. The next question is, with restaurants and bars closing or doing curbside takeout, where do we stand with regards to food service? Chris or Rob, if you want to address that one, I think that also goes what your state is doing state by state. I would call your health department in your state. I know that we've gotten several questions from New Hampshire, for example, and we've already called the state of New Hampshire health department and the food service department regards this. And they're of the opinion that if you are helping the public and you are healthy and sound, that they're not going to have a problem with that. But again, I think that's a state by state question. Chris or Rob, do you have any input on that one?
As the question was being asked, I did think of, my home state, which is Wisconsin, which is very strict that, only breakfast can be served only to your guests. And in our next newsletter, or actually I'll probably just make a phone call to the Wisconsin Bed and Breakfast Association and suggest that they pose that question to Department of Health, because they certainly would have, the strength in numbers, so to speak. The situation is affecting them directly, and, can they work with the health department? So that would be a route that I'd suggest, working through your state association, or if you have a personal relationship with the inspector, why not ask? Certainly, as Heather said, in some instances, if you're being what would be called a good Samaritan, very often, the regulators just, tend to look the other way for a temporary situation.
Okay. We have, let's see, just some comments. We do gift certificates for people for future rescheduling. And about refunds, we're telling our guests that we will honor refunds, but are refunding as we can based on revenues. Let's see. And then regarding the question on limiting your rooms, we've implemented a 2-night separation protocol. To the best of our ability, we will not book guests in a room until 2 days have passed after the previous guest checks out. This allows for deeper cleaning and time for any residual germs to expire. In some cases, we will only adhere to 1-night separation. We've communicated this protocol to all guests. That's interesting. Let's see, and then we have some suggestions. We're negotiating with guests that cancel by offering gift certificates or rebookings in lieu of. This has worked well. We also added a statement to new bookings to please contact us if they feel their trip may be canceled, so we can pre-arrange something that works for both. Once the guests understand the situations, they're more likely to accept the cancellation fees. Let's see, I have 4 medical travelers here, and I feel it's my duty to stay open. Oh boy. Let's see, what do you know about the financial help from the federal government for our industry? And Chris or Rob, I mean, I was reading a little bit about that earlier, but you might have some newer input on that.
To my knowledge, it's all developing. I've seen the, mass amounts that are projected, but whether or not this will actually happen as per, a congressional vote, or if it's an executive order, I don't know. And I don't know specific amounts to individual businesses. There have been so many amounts just tossed around.
Yeah, I mean, a slide that when we talked about HNLA, which again, we're kind of following their lead on this from, from a national perspective, they had, some asked for amounts in their requests, 100 billion for the hospitality workforce relief, which I think is really around employee retention and rehiring, and then some of the lending, which is about 50 billion. So to Chris's point, I think it's a bit of a moving target. We'll keep you, as up to date and connected as soon as we know, as these things, as these things pass. I think HNLA was over, at the White House yesterday as part of a meeting with the lodging industry, and I know they're doing their best to make sure that any economic packages or relief packages that get passed through Congress are going to include monies for our industry. And and as we talked about, there's some good information coming from the SBA that will help you navigate. So we'll get that out to you as soon as we can. But there's certainly the requests are being made for some significant relief funding.
Yeah. Thank you, Rob. And there's several questions from people that have employees that are concerned with how to deal with them and what to do with them. I was talking to Chris and Rob right before this webinar because I have gotten a lot of emails from innkeepers concerned about this. Again, there is no perfect answer for this. I did tell one innkeeper this morning, though, from my own personal experience years and years ago when I worked in the restaurant industry, I had two instances where the restaurants that I was working for both were encountering very severe financial difficulties, and one of them basically just laid everybody off and then closed their doors, and we found out afterwards that they were going bankrupt or they went bankrupt. And in the second case, the owners actually sat down with all of us and had a heart-to-heart and said, look, guys, we just can't afford to pay you. And a whole bunch of us volunteered to work for free with the promise that when the restaurant got back on its feet, we would still have jobs. Whether that could happen or not, we didn't know, but we were willing to take a chance with that. It went on a few weeks further than we expected, but the restaurant did recover, and we all sat down and tried to brainstorm about ways that we could help the business recover. And the restaurant ended up giving us quite a bit of our back pay. But I think from the perspective of all the employees that were there was about 30 something of us. We stayed to help because specifically the owners were upfront with us about this and let us know what was going on. Again, there is no perfect answer for that one, but I do personally think that you need to have that discussion with your employees and let them know. I mean, I'm sure that they have a pretty good idea, unfortunately, at this point. Chris or Rob, do you have any comments?
No, just go back. I think that, sorry, Chris, that was, well said. I just point back to, again, I know this doesn't solve this right now, but having some funding relief specific to employment, keeping employees employed or rehiring or unemployment benefits extended and those kind of things. So just know we're pushing for those. But I think Chris's or Heather's advice is, it's tough, but I think addressing it as soon as possible and trying to come up with some solutions, is probably the most likely first step.
The next question is, any idea how long it takes for the SBA to grant a loan? I have actually seen some loans going through in under 6 weeks. A lot of it's depending on filling out the paperwork correctly and filling it all out. The ones that seem to get held up in traffic, so to speak, are ones that are missing information or any documentation. I know that we were told anyway, and this is not rumor, but it was just told, not officially, that they are trying to bring on more staff to handle this. So I'm hoping they will continue to process these in a timely manner. The next question is, we are owners and employers of the business. Is it worth laying yourself off and risking insured unemployment insurance? Chris or Rob?
I think that's a good,
not an area I have any expertise
in. I think we should pose that to some of our insurance partners. Right. We could get an answer back on that for everybody ASAP.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And I can kind of speak to that one in that my husband works for an insurance company, and that question was actually asked last week by an innkeeper, actually by a couple of innkeepers. And I asked him, and he said, it's going to depend on your insurance company and the policy and how it's written. There is no blanket solution for that every insurance company across the board is going to give you. The next question is, do you know if the SBA is offering any relief if your mortgage has 504 loan? I do not, but I will certainly investigate and find that out. And there was a question, will this information be sent to everyone on the webinar? And it will be sent to everyone on the webinar. And literally, I've answered about 600 emails, well, maybe not 600, but at least several hundred from people that wanted to attend. It will be sent out to everybody. Let's see. The next question is, does anyone have any liability concerns in regard to the virus if you are open for business, i.e. someone claims they contracted it or you're at your facility, or is this no different from any other liability concern?
I think that would be a very good question for our insurance partners.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and I can speak again a little bit to that. It's going to be very much dependent on how you're putting out your wording in your marketing. So if you're saying to people, come stay at our inn, we guarantee that you won't get sick here, you are definitely going to be liable. A lot of it's a matter of interpretation. But it's a question of just like anything else. If you went to the supermarket and picked up the flu, or you picked up some bad germ, is it the liability of the grocery store that you got it at or not? That one has been asked by several other innkeepers. The question is, somebody claims they contracted at your facility. I don't know how they're going to prove that or not. I know that in New Hampshire, for example, our first case that got diagnosed up here, unfortunately was told to self-quarantine, and he did not. And he went out and infected several other people at a private event. And the facility that this happened at handled the whole thing extremely well. And I think from the perspective of how they handled it, has been, nobody's been saying, hey, we're going to sue you because we contracted the virus at that so far. I mean, that's not a perfect answer to it, but seeing as we don't know for a fact where someone can get it, especially if someone can be, what do they call it, asymptomatic, so not showing any symptoms for many, many days, I think they would have a really, really hard time proving it. Again, I am not a lawyer. That is not lawyerly advice, but this is what we are actually seeing in the news, though, as well. Chris or Bob, any comments on that one?
No, that sounds like a reasonable balance of information.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a question, I don't know how anyone will be able to prove they got COVID-19 at your inn. And again, I don't know how they would be able to prove that unless they, had directly had contact with someone that had it, and then like shortly after got diagnosed with that. But then again, how would you have known if they didn't have symptoms? You wouldn't have known that either. The next question is, I have not seen any conclusive evidence as to how long the virus lives on surfaces. Have you? It would influence how many days between guests. From what the CDC has been putting out, and everything that I've been reading from Johns Hopkins, and pretty much, I mean, I'm getting dozens and dozens of newsletters and trying to just keep on top of what the real news is from the real sources. They do not know that either. There have been some reports saying that surfaces can maybe live up to 9 days on things. I think there's probably a lot of variables in there. So, to be safe, that's a huge amount of time between the two of them. They're saying at least, 3 to 4 days just to be safe. That's something that I would just try to stay on top of the news. I think if they were saying it could stay on surfaces for more than 9 days or even 9 days, we would get a lot more reports of people coming down with symptoms, like long after the fact from that. But that is a very good question. Chris, Rob, any comments?
Yeah, I think that's well said. Yeah.
Okay. And then it looks like that is it for questions. I have been monitoring emails as well, and it looks like we have gotten all of them up to date. If you have questions that you think of after this webinar that you did not get a chance to ask, please email me at marketing@alplodging.org, and we will try to do our best to address them. And appreciate the thank yous coming in. We tried to get this together as best we can, and we will try our very, very best to keep you updated and help you all as much as we can. Please let us know what we can do to help you. Okay. Rob and Chris, do you want to have any closing statements for this?
Go ahead, Chris. Do you want to go first?
Sure, I certainly can. We certainly appreciate the fact that you attended this webinar, that you're very concerned about the issue, and that you are sharing that concern with your guests and trying to do the best you can with your business. And in turn, we will, as Heather said, do the best that we can to help you out through this time.
Yeah, I just echo what you said, Heather and Chris. I mean, it's well said. I appreciate everybody's participation, and you have a very committed team here to helping us get through this. And as Heather said at the start, we will, but we know it's extremely painful right now for a lot of reasons. So keep the feedback coming. We'll do our best to get you the answers that you need, and especially around the funding questions and any relief, both for you as property owners and your employees. As soon as we'll do our best, to advocate for those things and get you the information as soon as we can, so you can apply if that's something that you need.
Okay. And again, we will try to keep you as updated as possible, as currently as we can. I have been working every weekend and until late at night trying to keep up on this stuff. Please let us know what you need, though, because we unfortunately, we don't have mind readers on staff at this point. So please tell us. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. We did have a couple of questions about when this recording and other information will be going out. It generally takes about an hour for GoToWebinar to process this, and then we have to upload it online, but it should be available, and we will try to get it out before 4 p.m. today Eastern time. So thank you, everyone, and stay safe.
Yes.